One of the most successful entrepreneurs in America over the past 50 years is going public with his fourth and final prediction about a scenario he calls America's nightmare winter. You've probably never heard of Bill Bonner, but in addition to owning an interest in businesses all over the globe, he also owns more than 100,000 acres with massive properties in South America, Central America, the US, plus 3 large properties in Europe. Bonner says we're about to enter a very strange period in America, which could result in the most difficult times we've seen in many, many years. Bonner has made 3 similar predictions in his 50-plus year career, and each one proved to be exactly right, although he was mocked each and every time. This is why I strongly encourage you to read about Bonner's 4th and final prediction totally free today. It's all spelled out in a free report we've put together about America's nightmare winter scenario. Get the facts for yourself. Go to americasnightmarewinter.com to get your free copy of this report. Even if he's only partially right, it will dramatically affect you and your money. So again, go to americasnightmarewinter.com for this free report. Hi, this is Daniela Cambone, and welcome back to a very special edition of the Daniela Cambone Show here on Stansberry Research. My next guest says, the next global crisis has already begun. We're going to be talking about this and so much more. So please welcome back to the program, Bert Dohmen. He's the president of Dohmen Capital, founder of DohmenCapital.com, and the publisher of the Wellington Letter. Bert, always good to be with you. Welcome back to the Daniela Cambone Show.
Thank you very much, Daniela. It's nice to see you again. We've known each other for a number of years now, and you always do a great job. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I caught one of your latest interviews with Robert Kiyosaki, who, as you know, is a good friend of the show. And, he said that you're the guy he follows because 98% of your calls have been right on. So talk about kudos. Congrats on your success, Bert.
Oh. Thank you for mentioning that. So we still have to work on that 2%.
Well, no one's perfect. Nobody's perfect, except Robert Kiyosaki, maybe. But anyhow, let's talk about your recent pennings, which I, read with a lot of fear here and concern, where you say we're definitely in the beginning of a global crisis. And, I'm reading the latest headlines from Russia. Putin, who's speaking very much so about the threat of a nuclear war. I want to get your thoughts on the rhetoric that's coming out of Russia right now. Let's start with that.
Putin is very difficult to figure out right now. I used to think he's a very intelligent person, ruthless but intelligent. But I think something has gone wrong there with him. What he's doing really doesn't make much sense. He's really hurting his own country with this invasion of Ukraine just to get some more dirt. It just does not make sense. Now he threatened they would fight to the death and nuclear weapons are not off the table, etc. It just does not make sense what is happening. So when something doesn't make sense, then you have to really be very, very careful. I mean,
do you think he would go through with it, or is it just scare tactics?
Well, that's just, when people apparently have a mental problem, you cannot forecast what they're going to do.
Let's talk about what you write here specifically. You say Russia is now in a position to topple entire governments, perhaps even those of France and Germany. So you speak about how they are weaponizing energy. How dire is the situation in Europe? How concerned are you?
The European situation is so much worse than the US, and our situation is pretty bad. But in Europe right now, for example, one of the largest energy companies in Europe is now going to be nationalized by Germany because they just don't have the money to keep going. And this is one of the largest energy companies in Europe. So this is a major move to nationalize that. France just announced that they may even nationalize their entire nuclear industry because they want to reopen their nuclear reactors that they turned off some years ago. And the private industries that own these, they don't have the money to turn them back on. So France is going to nationalize. So this is going to be a world worldwide trend of bailouts, because that's really what it is. China is already doing it, and we're going to see this worldwide. So you're going to see nationalization, and that breeds a lot of corruption and economic distortions. So I think the main key for investors is to be careful. Don't follow the advice to go bargain hunting. You can make so much money in the next 10 years just by being on the short side.
Well, and we're going to talk about that in a bit, because you say, do not fear the superinflation, right? You're basically saying take advantage of it, that there's great opportunity, and I want to speak to you about that. But just want to stick to your narrative of this global turmoil. So, we mentioned Putin, we mentioned, the pressures that he's putting on Europe there. But you also speak about a recent speech from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, where he brought the message, and we remember it. He was on the stage with the bright red background, where he said that 75 million Americans are semi-fascists. Quote, you say this is supposedly the great danger the U.S. faces. And it was also said that these Americans present a clear and present danger to the country.
I don't think it got enough attention, because I think that no president has ever done that, declaring basically that 75 million people in the United States are the greatest danger to the country, and declares they are terrorists. That's not very good, because just because they have a different political opinion doesn't mean that they are terrorists. So this is a very dangerous signal. I've done a lot of reading about World War II. In the 1930s, there was a depression worldwide, not just the U.S., and out of that came big dictators, Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, even Franco. It was really a very bad time. And it comes out of that situation. In Italy, they started with fascism. Fascism is really when the big companies cooperate with big government, and to the detriment of the population. So anyway, but I'm not a politician, so I just look at it from the sidelines. I cannot change things. But what is happening is exactly what I said 2 years ago. We wrote that in the next 10 years, this is going to be very similar to the 1930s. The cycles say that. Okay, so this is, if it were a different president, it would probably happen the same way. But the cycles said we're due for a 10-year period of a depression, stock market crashes, turmoil, the famines. It's really amazing with these cycles. Natural crises happen at the same time. Like in the 1930s, we had the Dust Bowl years, etc. So I made the list of things to expect, which included the famines, locust invasions, etc., food shortages. We're seeing all of that. And by the end of last year, every one of these forecasts was already coming true, except wars. I had wars also in that list. And then we had the war in February with Ukraine. And now we're starting to have a war with Azerbaijan and in Armenia. So it's starting to happen. We're going to see more and more wars. This is a period of turmoil. It's a long-term cycle. It's about 70 years long. And so we have to get ready. It's 70 and 90 years. We have to get ready for the worst. But we also said at that time, we cannot change what is happening, okay? But we can at least help to protect ourselves, make somebody see if there's some profit opportunities. The first thing is, be safe. Don't follow the common advice. You don't want to follow 95% of the advisors that are out there. And what you want to do then is make money on the downside. And, have you ever noticed that stocks go down much faster than they go up?
Of course.
And there's a lot of money to be made. Like in 1980 to 1982, we had a period very similar. We had very high inflation. We had very high interest rates. And our subscribers made a huge amount of money as gold plummeted from $800 to actually $250. We were short the mining stocks and so on. So you can make profits in times like these by not following the crowd, and so we call it this opportunities of a lifetime are ahead. It will not be a beautiful environment, but at least you can make some money to offset the losses that you will have in other places,
Let's talk about the Fed now, because on your, I guess along your wavelength of being prepared, not being fearful, being smart, and just getting ahead, you wrote, this is back at Jackson Hole, the Fed chair's speech suddenly did away with the ridiculous optimism of a Fed pivot and lowering of interest rates in the not too distant future. Now we see the latest interest rate hike, 75 basis points, not the full point that some people were expecting, but still more interest rate hikes. How long does this go on for? How long is this tightening cycle?
Until you are in a depression and you have double-digit unemployment. And so I see analysts on TV and so on now saying, oh, it's going to be great buying opportunity when we hit bottom. Well, when we hit bottom, nobody's going to have any money. They're all going to be in the poorhouse. The boom was going to be in homeless people and trying to find places to put the homeless people. I don't think we have enough sidewalk space to house all the homeless people that we're going to have. And so that's what you want to get ready for. Now, the Federal Reserve and all central banks have made huge mistakes in the last 5-6 years. In the U.S., interest rates by the Federal Reserve, the Fed funds rate, was kept at 0%. In Europe, they actually went below zero, and they had negative interest rates. Even on government bonds, you had to pay the government interest if you bought a government bond. I mean, it was totally ludicrous. It's the first time ever in world history that this has been done. Nobody knows what the long-term consequences are, except that they won't be good. So now we are going to the adjustment period. Everybody thinks a 75 basis point increase in the Fed funds rate is big. No, the Fed funds right now is what, 3.5%? This is ridiculous, 3.5%. But the inflation is as it was in 1980. Okay, same rate of inflation. Do you know what the Fed funds rate was in 1980? It was 20%.
Right.
That's where we're going.
That's where we're going?
When you have inflation that is at the same level as in 1980, then you should have interest rates at the same level as well. In 1979, our business was only 2 years old, and I forecasted that the prime rate would go to 20%. And the chief economist of Goldman Sachs at the time said, oh, that's absurd. Our financial system could never take that. And I said, yes, it would if inflation is high enough. And then inflation went up to 15%, and the prime rate went to 20%, exactly where I said it would go. So, these things are predictable if you know where to look.
If that's the situation, so would we be in a deep recession at that point?
Yes, but you see, to get that, and we don't know what the Federal Reserve is going to do. We can only guess because they don't know themselves what they're going to do. That's the problem. We have economists, they're PhD economists. They only know what they know from textbooks. I am not an economist. I always point that out. I'm not an economist, and I'm proud of it. I took several years of economics in college just to find out why economists are always so wrong. I got a degree in chemistry, because that's what I liked.
Look, just humor me, okay, for a second.
Okay.
What play it out if we were just to reverse course and just start printing money again? And we all just go back into La La Land euphoria and let the good times roll. What would be so bad about that? What would happen if we were just to let the printing press go off again?
Yeah, Daniela, you're going to find out the answer to your question in the next 2 years. You're going to find that out because that is exactly what they're going to be doing. They're going to fight a deep recession with new printed money. And that is going to give us a next push up in inflation. So my forecast 2 years ago was first we're going to go to the last high in inflation, which was 1980. So that prediction has come true. We're already there. And I said, after that, we're going to go to the old all-time high in inflation in the United States, which was in 1917, and that was over 19%. So inflation is going to make a new high, in my opinion, sometime over the remainder of this decade. Let's call it that.
So really super duper pumped up inflation.
Yes, I think the way it is right now with the people we have there, and if Powell gets retired, let's call it that, to be nice. If he's retired, they're going to get somebody else in there that will go along with that policy. That will say, yes, let's print money, and the key word will be, it doesn't matter that it's deficits. We owe it to ourselves, which is the greatest fairy tale there is.
Okay. I brought up Robert Kiyosaki at the start, and he always says savers are losers. He doesn't like saving. What do you think folks should be doing with that cash right now? Sectors you like?
Well, sectors I love. There's only one area that I like right now for the next several months, and that's natural gas. After that, we have to look at it, but it's basically be short. That is where you want to put your emphasis. If you don't know how to sell short, then find out the names of ETFs that do this short selling for you. They are called inverse ETFs. And you can make a lot of money. They're designed to go up in price as the sector or the index that they represent go down.
Let me ask you this, Bert. Last time you were on, you were bullish gold long term. I need to get your thoughts on two things. One, do you think it's a fair assessment to say that gold is failing as an inflation hedge? Was it ever an inflation hedge? Should it be? I want to get your thoughts on that. And two, what you make of the current price action of the metal here.
The price action is very bearish. And this is, I've said for the last 40 years, this is the most manipulated area of the investment markets, manipulated by the big banks. JP Morgan just had two of its gold traders prosecuted, and I don't know if they'll go to jail or not. But we're seeing multi-billion-dollar fines imposed on these huge banks that trade gold because they have been manipulating the gold price for decades, not just for a few years, for decades. Okay, and I've always said that this is a very manipulative market. They're sitting on the gold price, okay, because these banks, they borrow gold from central banks, and they pay maybe the central bank 0.5%. Then they take that gold and then they speculate with derivatives against their borrowed gold. It's kind of interesting because, in effect, that's also a short position in gold. So these banks have to be very careful and very active that gold does not rise in price. So they have to sit on the price because if gold rises in price, they're all going to get margin calls.
Bert, I hear your thoughts on manipulation. Are you suggesting that the price is still manipulated even though the so-called spoofers have been caught? Is that really what's the issue with the price of gold? What about the strength of the US dollar part of it?
Yeah, Danielle, that's a good question. But just because they've prosecuted two guys now, doesn't mean that it's over, because they've been doing this for the last several decades. They always catch these guys. There's a fine of maybe $1 billion, but in the meantime, the banks have made tens of billions of dollars with the manipulation, so they get a slap on the wrist, and that's all there's to it. I don't like to invest in a market that is very very manipulated. So for me, I love gold, but I don't like it as an investment.
Wow. What do you like it as then?
Right now, if I were forced to take a position, I would sell short, especially the miners. But that is a short-term position. And see, Daniela, the important thing is, for people, I always get this question when I still used to speak at conferences, which I don't do anymore. But I was, what should I do now? It was always the question. I said, what is your time horizon? Is it 1 week,
Right.
1 month, 1 year, 10 years? And the people say, gee, I never thought of that. Yes, you have to know. Before you take the position, you have to know what is your time horizon.
You know the answer. Everyone wants money today, now, yesterday. We want fast money.
I want to double my money in the next 2 hours, right?
That's the answer.
Yeah. And so basically, we started a program a few years ago called Hedge Folios. So it's 5 model portfolios. We don't manage money, okay? So it's about 5 model portfolios, but people can replicate it. We give exact percentage allocations for each ETF that is in the portfolio. And we do the timing according to our technical signals, So people can just replicate that, see what we're doing, and do it for themselves.
Really good thoughts from you, Bert. I guess there's a lot to digest here, right? Like you've created a very, talking about all this global uncertainty, global meltdown. I'm just curious to get your thoughts also on the coming digital dollar. I mean, based on what we're hearing from the White House, it almost seems, if we read between the lines, that it may be coming sooner than we think. I'm not sure if you're really following that story, but interested to get your thoughts on whether you think that may become a reality sooner than we think.
Well, the important question is, should people be investing in digital currencies? Like we had the Bitcoin mania, Ethereum, and all this stuff. I think there are well over 2,000 cryptocurrencies now. Most of them are scams. And I've always said, eventually they will all end up at the same price. And that is intrinsic value. And the intrinsic value of all the cryptos is zero. That is where they're all going to end up. And then we're going to have the digital currency from the government. And that is going to take the place. And then we're all going to have money that's on your phone and so on. And the money, if you say something nasty about certain people, they will just flip a switch and you are homeless.
Would that motivate you to move to a country that does not have a digital dollar? Would you want to leave that society?
Well, there are a lot of people thinking about that. I kind of like the United States,
I always appreciate speaking with you, Bert. You're great fun, and I hope to see you soon.
Okay, I hope to see you soon. Come out here. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I wish all of your wonderful listeners good luck in the next several years. Be careful.
I'll come see you on the West Coast, but we're going to speak to you before the next several years, so you'll be back before then.
Okay.
And thank you all for watching. We'll have much more for you on the Daniela Cambone Show. Be sure to sign up at danielacambone.com so you stay on top of all these awesome interviews and you don't miss a beat. That's it for me. Thank you for watching.
Opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the contributor and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Stansberry Research, its parent company, or affiliates.